Welcome to Hairblazers, the podcast where seasoned salon owners and industry specialists share their knowledge. Our mission is to empower owners and elevate salons through conversation about what matters most to you. Today, we are so happy to welcome DJ Muldoon, who is a craft hairdresser, global hairstylist, and founder of Knowledge Destroys Fear. Welcome, DJ.
What's up? Good to be back. How are you?
I'm doing great today. I'm so excited to have you. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I think you're the first person we've had back for like a second episode.
Oh, cool. I like that. That's
good.
The first one was so good. You have to have me back.
Yeah, exactly. We had so much fun.
Yeah, cool.
Absolutely. And I just knew there was like so many more stories there. Like you've had such an incredible experience and an incredible career in the industry. Obviously, still so many more exciting things to come. But yeah, I was like, I know that there's just so much more here to chat about.
Yep, there's quite a few stories in there.
I believe it.
I've been here a minute.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're actually so pleased because we actually have this opportunity to have DJ here with us in person because he's also here doing 2 days of education with our teams. So that is super, super exciting. So one of the things that I really wanted to get into today was discussing some things that are different and some things that are the same between educating when you first started, because you started educating when you were like 20?
I was 21, I think, when I taught my first class.
Yeah.
Like advanced to people that were already licensed or already, practicing hairdressers, not students in a school. But I think I was around obviously 20 when I first started teaching haircutting.
Yeah, that's so incredible. And, it's also incredible to be in an industry where you can start so young and be able to really accumulate that amount of experience. It's not like you have to wait till you're 25 or 30 to get started.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was at the right place with the right people at the right time. It was Vidal Sassoon. It was I graduated high school in 1994. So September, I signed up to go to school. They had a waiting list, you know what I mean? It was one school in like the US, in North America. So I finally got a class available in January 95. So I was immersed in this environment from a very young age. And I realized that that's where I wanted to stay and be a teacher. So I did my training in the Vidal Sassoon Academy. I didn't do it in the salon. I only did 1 day a week at the Beverly Hills Salon. So I was training around education all the time. So it was a really, very lucky, fortunate situation. And I always knew that. And, that's what made me be an educator. And I've been an educator ever since. So that was the thing that I always wanted to become.
Yeah, that's so incredible. And, with all of this experience with education, so you graduated from high school in 1994, so you probably started teaching in 96?
97? Yeah, 96, 97 for sure,
Yeah, that's amazing. So that's like over 20 years of experience educating.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there's a lot of things that are different between then and now.
Yeah.
And, one thing that we were kind of chatting about before was now a lot, because people have the opportunity to enter this industry so young, a lot of the people that you're educating now are Gen Z, as opposed to before, you're looking at like millennials or like Gen X, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of talk about how Gen Z are so different. So do you find that they're different? What ways are they different?
I think, I've come at this two angles. I'm a parent as well, and I have a Gen Z child, and I'm a Gen X person. So that's my generation. I think every generation's got their similarities. I think in our game, it's about being a consistent educator, understanding what actually teaching a class requires, what the levels are, what the key points are. I don't think they ever change. And I think every generation's going to understand that if you cater to that. Now, what I've found with Gen Z and even with millennial is we need the information, and it's already delivered differently anyway, isn't it? You know what I mean? It wasn't delivered that way when I was in school. It was manual. There was no internet had just started. So you weren't using anything like that at school. There was no devices. And that's just how it was for me. And I'm watching the new generation. That's how they need it. So for me, the change is more the simplicity of how you deliver the information. Now that obviously comes with experience, but that also can be taught in teacher training. Outlining the key points of a class, which any teacher does in any school. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can relate to anything. So.
Absolutely.
I just feel that that's kind of where it needs to go, or where it's going is it's more delivered in a simple manner. The terminology is changing,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big piece of it. And I think that, originally your class was called Common Knowledge,
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah.
So you really tried to kind of like focus on the fundamentals and giving it that simplicity and making it easy to understand.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be so incredibly complex to be able to be executed well. And usually if we actually bring things down to be simpler, they're easy to understand, and then you can get to the level where you're executing it extremely well.
Yeah. There's a saying by Albert Einstein: if you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. And I feel that that's kind of true. But it's like what I said earlier, the experience is what's paramount in this, like being able to deliver it simply. So it's up to people like myself who can do that to then pass that ability on to other people before, they have to do it with experience. That can be passed on to a younger generation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing that's really cool is the class you're teaching today is all about training mentors in the salon, people who will be working day to day behind the chair, supporting new talent.
Yeah.
So what are some of the main things that you want to impart on people that are, going to be mentoring and training this next generation?
So, when it comes to the actual how I would teach something like that, to me, it's all about, peer, mentoring. You've got a room of educators or a room of mentors, whatever we want to call it. And there are people that are there to nurture and share and, encourage and enhance the younger talent. So for me, it's getting them to actually do it amongst themselves. It's not necessarily me showing making them do it. It's me showing them clear outline of how I teach it, and then having them go and do it amongst themselves. So we'll be doing a lot of objective-based education today, where I hit the clear outline points of what we're teaching. I show them what it is. They then team up with someone else. They go do it, and the other person coaches them while they do it, and then vice versa. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the objective is to then mentor each other so that, they're using the material that they're already using, and then they can use that in the salon environment afterwards. So.
That's so wonderful. And I think it's really great to give people the space to practice those things hands-on.
Yeah, that's the key thing.
For sure, because when you're in an education class, you're supported and you come up with a challenge. You're not in the salon where there's, a guest that's in a rush to leave and all of these other pieces happening.
Yeah.
Maybe they're behind on laundry and you need to get a cape, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're not having to worry about all of the other chatter. And I think for peer-to-peer, sometimes people can be maybe more challenged to give feedback peer-to-peer than they would be to somebody that they're like technically leading or technically like managing.
Yeah.
I think that peer-to-peer can sometimes feel a little bit more challenging. And I think it's both sides of celebrating and appreciating when people do things right, and also being able to give that feedback and that correction and that improvement if there's an area to improve.
Most definitely. It's all about positive encouragement and helping each other through that. And when you're doing it amongst peers, you're being held accountable, really, aren't you, to the level of what you're trying to do. So the standards then are consistent.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how different is that from like when you were trained as an educator?
I was trained as an educator just to be a really good haircutter, like to be the best haircutter that you could be, Vidal Sassoon trained, which is pretty good. And then it's like, okay, now go teach that. So there wasn't really any, here's a definite. I mean, there was, but it wasn't so outlined like it can be. And when I left Vidal Sassoon, I went to work somewhere else, another company, and they introduced me to like trainings, to teach teachers how to teach, and it kind of aligned with how I taught my classes. I'd already figured out that if you're going to teach, you've got to teach what, why, how, when, and what if. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got to have a open, a body, and a close. Do you know what I mean? It's simple lesson plan. And if you work to that, you can effectively teach a group of people. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one thing that's very interesting, that's probably very different now than when you first started, is that there's more emphasis on how to educate, how to be an educator. It's not just being very good
at what
at
you
the
do.
thing. Yeah, because there's so many people that are extremely good at what they do, but it doesn't necessarily translate into the people skills that are required to educate.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we have platforms now where you see everything, whereas before you didn't. That's what was different in my younger days, was you literally had to climb the ladder. There wasn't a platform where you could showcase yourself like there is now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love social media because it's helped me, my following grow. And then obviously that takes my business or whatever, my education out to a different reach in the world. We didn't have that when we first started. So, now you have people that are sharing what they do. Now, sharing what you do is not the same as educating. It's a little different, so there's a different process. If you can marry those two together, then it's, priceless stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It can be very powerful. But I agree, like educating and creating content are kind of two different skill sets, right? For sure. And you can definitely do both.
Definitely.
But one is not necessarily the same as the other.
No, I think they align with each other, don't they? And it's like, that's what I do. I look at my social media as an advertisement for what I do, but I'm also a trained haircutting teacher with massive amounts of experience as well. You know what I mean? So I've got quite a few things in my arsenal there to go with it. But you don't necessarily have to have that, and that's the beauty of it. But, education is a completely different thing. It's, like we said, it's nurturing, and it's, putting the right things across in the most simplest manner.
Absolutely. So speaking of social media, one thing that I think is really interesting that I'd love to hear your take on is that obviously we now have access to all of this information, which is incredible. Yeah. But there's also a huge volume of that information.
For sure.
And not every single person has the credentials that you have, Obviously you are backing up all of your education with all these years of experience, all these years of training, a license, all of those sorts of things. Yeah. So what advice or recommendations would you give somebody that's new to the industry, that's maybe trying to like sift through all the noise to find education and tips and recommendations that actually work well in the salon?
There's an old saying, the proof is in the pudding. Do you know what I mean? It's like you have to try it and see. Like I was talking about teaching what, why, how, when, but the what if is the most important. You know what I mean? And most people have all these questions. What if this? What if that? What, you know what I mean? In haircutting, just try it. Do you know what I mean? And that's probably what most people are doing that are on social media. They've tried it. Do you know what I mean? They've stood over here and pulled the hair over here and realized it did that, and they're giving it a go, and now they're sharing that and they're teaching it. And I also feel like if it speaks to you and it makes complete sense to you, and it's in your learning language, then go for it. You know what I mean? I used to be so like segregated as an educator in the industry because I came from this entity called Sassoon, and you have your Aveda, and then you have your Paul Mitchell and whatever companies. And I feel like now it's not necessarily so much like that. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, for sure. There's all things that we can learn from each other.
Exactly. And social media is a great environment for someone that wants to start to be an educator as well. because it does give you that platform. It's the same as someone showing up at a product company audition, you know what I mean, or a tryout or something like that. You do your tryout on screen now, and it's such a great tool to use for both inspiration and education.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that technology is something that has shifted a lot in terms of education delivery, and I think just kind of the industry overall in general.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear from you about some of the things that are different, are like the most different now compared to when you entered the industry in the salon world and in the education world.
Education, I mean, technology-wise?
Technology and just in general.
Oh, okay.
Because
So
we have new technology,
yeah,
we have a new generation in the salon.
for sure, how we get that information delivered is totally different now. I believe that when I'm teaching, you're there to cut hair. So I've always been a teacher that tries to cut hair as much as possible, not necessarily myself, but the student, the learner. And with that, I changed how I taught. So when I was a younger teacher, what I used to do is I'd stand in front of people for like a half a day, and I'd write out all the information about hair cutting, all the technical stuff. And it was just like amazing. But then, you realize that half the room's into it and the other half's not getting it. They're not understanding it. And that's when you understand how people don't learn the same. They will love the information, but they need it delivered a different way. So, what I started to do was I just started to do hands-on all the time. I found that the most effective way when I was younger. Every time we did hands-on, the students, that's all they wanted to do. They didn't necessarily want to watch me demonstrate. And so, but what I did is I actually blended the two together. So I demonstrate, then they do it. And I don't demonstrate the whole thing. I demonstrate one portion, maybe a panel. We go through the what, why, how, when, and what if. Then they go do it. Then I watch them, and then we bring them back. And, that became more of an effective way of teaching. But as generations change, then obviously that needs to be delivered in a different way. So I needed to enhance what I'm doing. So we use visuals, you know what I mean? We can use learning centers, do you know what I mean? Little areas where someone can go and engage in something and learn something about a technique or a shape or something like that. So not so one-dimensional education anymore, just adding more depth to it. And then obviously technology comes into place. As far as what people are doing is for education in salons, I don't really think that's changed that much. Obviously you're going to have certain salons that maybe don't educate as much as other salons, you know what I mean? That's always been the case. But now how education can be delivered, it can also be received very easily, you know what I mean? So we teach online now, you know what I mean? So Knowledge Destroys Fear is not just me showing up at a place anymore or me teaching in San Diego where I live. It's doing all the online stuff and that and connecting with a much bigger audience.
Yeah, and it makes it much more accessible that way too,
for
right?
sure. It's everywhere. And, one of the things I've really been enjoying, because I have to get enjoyment out of this also. It's not just a financial thing, obviously.
You have to love what you do.
Yeah.
If you don't, then you're not going to show up fully.
We all need to have a career, don't we, and pay bills.
Of course.
So that's a given. So I've chosen this, and this is just an amazing thing. So, having that tool now to expose it to a bigger audience is just great. And I'm really enjoying the fact that I'm getting this big barbering audience. I'm starting to see a lot of barbers taking my classes, and not just like one barber, it'd be like a whole group. So, it's the whole shop and that.
Yeah.
And, that's something recently that I've been enjoying. I'm like, wow, okay, barbers are really into, Knowledge Destroys Fear and that, which is really cool. Yeah.
So what do you see that's different both in education and in salons in terms of the people? Obviously Gen Z, they're technological natives. They're used to having things in a more technological approach. They're used to having all those additional things.
Yeah.
But in terms of actually the communicating with people. How do you find that that is different with this new generation?
Again, I have to put my parent hat on.
Yeah, I'm sure
It's just how the information is delivered. I'm really fortunate. I'm 48. I'll be, I'm old, I guess, now compared to a lot of people in our industry. But I'm also a parent and I have a Gen Z kid, and it's just all about listening and understanding. But I've always been like that, you know what I mean? And I feel everyone needs to do that. It's cliche for me to say stuff like that, though, isn't it?
But especially as an educator, you need to be able to
you have to evolve.
Yeah, and listen and understand to what people's challenges are and be able to discuss and address those challenges.
Yeah, it's as simple as a thing as like, people getting annoyed about the new names of haircuts and calling it the TikTok names. And it's like, we all did that. We didn't have TikTok, but we still were like, okay, that name's a bit lame that the older generation used. Let's use a new name. Do you know what I mean? So, when I see people moan about stuff like that, people moaned about the internet becoming big and social media helping educators along. And, in my day, it was like this. Like, you have to go with it.
It's never going to be that day ever again.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's like watching a TV show and there's the grumpy old guy in the corner or something, isn't it? It's like you have to go with it, and I've always been like that my entire career. It's like I see how things are changing with the youth, with the younger generation. I did it myself when I was in my younger generation. We took the forefront like every generation does, and you enhance technology, don't you? Because you bring it with you, you're into it. And, I have to put that hat on, that parent hat too. And it's like, how do I deliver the information? Is it quick? Is it concise? Is it to the point? Is there an element of, that you have to think, is it kind of cheesy? Do you know what I mean? Is there that cringiness to it that maybe was in a different generation? You know what I mean? So you have to change your language. The language has changed. Terminology has changed. If I say concave layers, yes, some people are going to understand that if they're technically trained. But, some people are not going to understand that. So you're going to have to start using other analogies that people can relate to. And if you can use analogies that are modern and now, it really helps. That's what helps the new generation get through it. Being a parent of that generation obviously helps because I'm compassionate to it as well. How that generation wants to act, how they want to learn. This is how they are. That's what my generation has given them to do, by raising them in this environment. And, that's how we have to be. We have to be supportive and deliver the information in a simpler manner than what we've done before. Because that's how they demand it. Everything's there now, so put it on there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. You have to bring it to where people are actually consuming that.
Of course you do. You have to make it accessible. So back in the day, you'd have to make it accessible with the mediums that you had. Mm-hmm. So there was magazines, wasn't there? There was video content and that. But, now it's just readily available and you've got to put it on every platform or, wherever your audience is.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that in our industry, because the time in school is so short and you can start your career so young, it's actually even more important for us to be in tune with the younger generation because those are the stylists that you're going to be hiring. Those are the people that you're going to be educating. Those are people that are up and coming in the industry. And that change happens so much faster because you have to go to school for such a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you just have to be able to get that across because I feel school's getting shorter and shorter with hair school nowadays. Like it's like even like when you think of like when you went to school in kindergarten compared to when you went to school in middle school or whatever, elementary and then high school, each level of teaching was different and each level of how they dealt with you. Like when you went to kindergarten, it was as if they were like a part of your family, your teacher. They were still like nicey. Do you know what I mean? And then it got a little different as you got older because you needed that discipline and that education in a different manner, didn't you? And that's just how it is now. You just have to know your audience and your age group and what they want.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the challenge, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the gift of our industry and the challenge of our industry.
Yeah.
100%.
Because, we have educators from different generations.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to deliver the information to all the generations, not just your generation.
Yeah, 100%.
For sure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, DJ,
You're
and
very
sharing your
welcome.
wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Before I let you go, I would love to ask real quick if you have like a hot take or unpopular opinion about the industry that you can share with us.
Oh, God. I don't. Off the top of my head, no, but probably when I leave the room, I'll be like, oh, this one and that one. I've grown up in the industry. I was born into this industry and I've been around it. So there's nothing much that shocks me that happens in the industry. When I was younger, I probably had more gripes with certain things, but, I've carved out my own little path, my own niche of what I do, and I'm pretty happy with what the rest of the industry is doing. There's not much. I just hope that education stays paramount, and I hope it doesn't, lose its, popularity in the industry. That's kind of the main part of it. The only thing that's going to make you better is the education.
Yeah, 100%. And the industry changes, so you need to change with
roll
it.
with it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Roll with it. Ride the wave.
For sure. That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing. We
Cheers.
really enjoyed having you today.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Cheers, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Leave a review, share with your team, and tune in next time. We appreciate you.